because I've got Sarah every other Sunday anchor, and really, really aligns with the word of the day, which is reflection. I'm sorry, the title of the show, which is reflection, and the word of the day is review. And this has been a fabulous week with so many wonderful guests who have created so much value for all of us. But just as importantly, I want to recognize the audience because without you, there is no us or reason for us to be here. So, chat's open. We depend on you to be as relevant as we can and bring as much value in the short time we have together. So, before comments start taking over, I'll turn it over to Sarah. Sarah can bring you up to date on what she's been doing, where she's at, where she's going, and her first thoughts on the word review. Take it away, Sarah.
Thank you, Don. It's so lovely to be back with you. And again, another 2 weeks just gone like that. Poof. Where? We're nearly at the end of the year. Can you even believe that?
No, not at all.
So the last 2 weeks have just been a bit crazy, actually, but in a good way, because on top of everything else I'm doing, I've started a course as well, but it's just for 30 days. And it's all about self-development. So that comes from reviewing my needs, my wants, my desires. So when we're looking at the word review, there's a few different meanings to look at it. As you've said, the reflection, which is the subject matter for this week. But when we review something, we can look over it, study it, examine it, and evaluate. So essentially, in that type of review, we're looking back on something to analyze it with criticism or correction to be able to see where we're at or something's at or whatever it is that we're reviewing. And then I see the other side of review as someone's informed opinion about a book or a product or a performance or something. So somebody is reviewing with the skills that they've got within their subject area, something else of somebody else. So that I see review as a double meaning, if you like. How do you see it, Don?
Well, I love the way you see it because it makes it easier for me to see it. And what I see is there's two elements that are involved with review. It's your review of whatever it is, and it's something else's activity, right?
Yeah.
So if you get in your car, it's you doing it, but now you have the experience of the car. And the third piece is reviewing, and it could be a quick review, like everything's fine, right? It doesn't have to be microscopic.
Yeah.
But because there's so many changes in your environment, it requires you to continue to review your atmosphere in order to review you, right? So, what do you need to be that you think would help? And what are you dealing with, which is the it? And then, how do you look at the situation? Because I know one thing or a couple things is if you stretch out time, everything looks more achievable. So when you review it, at what point are you making it an urgent situation versus I'll just keep knocking pieces off of this and make it a comfortable review? Because sometimes a review will show you startling results and it'll surprise you, maybe excite you, more than likely disappoint you. And then you want to get back on your horse. But it doesn't always happen just because you reviewed and decided. And acceptance of responsibility and accountability take a big portion of it. But before I send it right back to you, let's recognize Carl's here. Carl's been here pretty much the last few days. Great guy. Joined one of the collaboration groups. And, it was so amazing. This week we talked about newsletters and went through like a 5 or 10 minute, like, how do you do it and what do you do and why do you do it? Carl launched his the next day. And then the last couple of days, it's been doubling in subscribers.
Wow.
Isn't that terrific? So it's just little things like we were talking before the show, done right over time, can give you such a competitive edge over the people who are static, who are not flexible, responsive, easy to change. Well, it just shows they're never going to jump into the race. And if they do, they're not going to be long-term players unless they change their attitude or mindset. And maybe that's how you change it, by getting into it and then seeing it what it really is versus what your fear was, or anything else. Randy's here. When Randy's here, he's always commenting. Great to see you, Randy. Omar's here from Zoom Party. Actually, I'm going to be on his first, I think, with Leslie Flowers and 2 other people.
Fabulous.
Yeah, and all prizes go to charity. So great to see you, Omar. Great guy to know. Actually, this is a great opportunity to reach out and connect with people you're not connected with, that you feel there's an alignment. So getting back to you, Sarah, when you look at how you review, what are the biggest challenges that you face?
I think that the biggest challenge that potentially we can all face is not seeing our biases. So we can review something within our own bias without seeing that. So it's about being open-minded, to be able to take on board the constructive criticism that people might be reviewing something that you're doing, or even yourself. I mean, we can critically review our own progress, our own work, our own driving ability, anything, literally, and make those corrections, and change our mindset, our behaviors, our actions to be more aligned with where we want to go rather than where we were heading, because it's all too easy to be tunnel vision and closed-minded and just head off on this track, and this is all I'm thinking about, and this is where my future is, and this is what I'm going to do. I think sometimes, especially in my life, I thought I'd be a nurse forever and then retire from nursing. And it was only because I was open-minded to take on board some information and do some research, I changed my mindset. So essentially, somebody was not criticizing something I was doing, but asked me to reflect on what I was doing and gave me an alternative, which I had never considered. So I think if we can remain open-minded to take on board that new information, it helps us to review our own biases and our own beliefs, but actions as well. And for me personally, it totally changed my life course. But for others, it might just be a little bit more subtle.
Mhm.
And even if all it does is open your eyes to your own biases, I mean, that's in itself is a good thing. But if it can do more and you can use that constructive criticism to be able to change your mindset when somebody's reviewing something you've done or talked about or about to do or said, then that can only be a good thing. But we have to be open-minded to take on board that constructive criticism and not see that as a personal attack. And that, again, takes mindset, because when I was in victim mindset, any constructive criticism that came along, I saw as an onslaught against me because I was in that mindset. But when I've healed that, to where I am now, I like to think I'm a lot more open-minded and take on board what is it they're trying to tell me, even if they're not using the correct words, or what they're saying might sound a little like digging out, or a personal attack. But if we can look past that, what are they actually meaning? What's the meaning behind their words? So
Mhm.
it's totally about keeping that open mind to be able to take on board that information.
That's excellent. And for the time and the experience it took you to get to that point, it would have been so much better and easier if you had already been closer to that point, went
Yeah.
right. So the people here who are not at that point, but maybe directing themselves there, can do a reflection and a review. And when I think of, and I thought which that was so excellent because it allowed a process for it to be understood and work through.
Yeah.
And I think working through is an important word versus just leaping and not catching anything, and eventually you stop jumping.
Yeah.
And then when you really dig deeper into the word review, it's review, a new view, right? A optimized view, right? Here was yesterday's picture. Here's what I added. Review this, right? See the change. And now that your book is there, and we talked about reviews being something that relate to judgment, could be a movie, could be a book, could be what we're doing here. How does your book, and it's important to share what you've spent so much time and what you're so focused on, help people in that open mindset review type opportunity?
I think, as looking back, the 3 people that translated it into Dutch, Spanish, and French all said they hadn't really got any health problems, but in translating, reading other people's stories and translating them, they actually felt empowered and felt like that they now were able to do anything because
Wow.
of the stories from the healers. So I mean, one lady said, I've been thinking about moving house, but I've put it off and I'm not quite sure. And she's like, now I'm like, I'm just going to move house. Why should I not? So the review that I've got back from them was a feeling of empowerment from other people. In the main, most people have said, that they like my book because it opened their mind to the fact that they can heal themselves. I have got literally 1 or 2 people that keep coming back to me and say, that's not possible, that's not possible, that's not possible. So I've stopped not arguing, but I've stopped discussing it with them because they are not willing to open their mind. They are in that's not possible, that's not possible. Oh, I don't believe that. So all I can do is send them love, and hope that they find their own peace. But in the main, other people have said, I didn't realize it was possible. Now I've read that, I'm going to give it a try. Or can you help me, support me to do this? Or how can I heal that? And the reason I wrote my book was because Joe Dispenza, just to paraphrase it, said more or less that all it takes for somebody to be able to believe something is possible that they thought was impossible is to see one person doing it. So that was the idea behind my book. If I can show you one or more than one person, healing these diseases, is it possible I can open your mind to the fact that it now is possible because these people have done it? And that's the kind of reviews I've got. I didn't think it was possible. Oh, it's great to see people healing. And that was the whole reason that I wrote my book, was to help other people to see that actually they can heal themselves by themselves. And that was the purpose of my book, to help them to open their mind to that they don't need the pills. They can do the work themselves. And we all detail how we did it and what we did. So it will save them a lot of money in therapy, and B, it will show them the ways and the things they need to do, because the healers have all done something a little bit different, but something a lot the same as well. So it's about being able to be open-minded, to see that other people are doing it and recognize that it is possible and we can do it.
Yeah, that's so perfect. And I guess you have to start to heal your mind first. That will then help you heal everything else, because it's a belief. And,
It is a belief, yeah.
Right. And it's just like that placebo effect. It gets bigger every year. And people are eating sugar pills and getting the same benefit as people who are taking the regular medicine without the challenge that brings. And, once you believe it's possible, and some people only believe what they see, right? And if they see their next door neighbor getting something for something that they knew they could do even better,
Yeah.
it's not actually them getting a belief, it's them getting a vision of someone who's actually doing it and getting it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to be proven. And that's where collaboration, that's where groups, support groups come in, is because you look around the table, and if everybody's like you feel like you're in the majority now instead of the minority, and you found your home. And I think for people to heal, they need that backup, the knowledge that, hey, if they fall, someone will catch them, or they won't be alone, or someone will be able to find something to believe in. And, I think if you live moment to moment, fear has to go away because you're actually there right now in the only place there is. And you're there, right? What fear could you have?
Yeah.
And it's the people who always think things are too good to be true. They grew up with a limited mindset, and a limited belief system that, hey, if it's too good, something bad will happen. And something bad always does happen because that's the expectation. And so there's so much depth to what we're talking about, but it's really about taking the quiet time, the peaceful time. Don't review something when you're frustrated, angry. It's like, okay, let me check this out. You're almost like, let me finish this, versus, hey, this would be a good chance to review. And whatever is you're reviewing, I mean, and there's no one thing. You've got relationship challenges, you've got health issues, you've got financial issues, career, you name it. At every level of growth, there's something that you're dealing with, and sometimes you're dealing with a lot at once.
Yeah.
And the easiest thing is to take the first thing first and focus, because a lot of people get spread out. But before we get too deep, we got to get back to the audience. Carl, happy to double my subscribers on my instant funding newsletter again today from 230 to 460. Subscribe on LinkedIn. Okay, well, you can put the link in comments on the post too, so people can see it, because this is a review of everybody's contributions, successes. Isn't it nice when we can celebrate versus just have to pick people up off the ground, and lift people over the ground is so fantastic. And Carl, you're going to see it just going to grow on its own. My newsletter's up to 11,000. I get 40 new subscribers a day. I don't do a thing. That's the nice thing about doing LinkedIn right. LinkedIn tells everybody to do what they need to do. Every time we go live, LinkedIn shares that with everybody in the network. Every time you do a newsletter, they email everybody in your network. So why not partner with someone who's already partnering with you and combine? Randy's here, says your mindset impacts how you make sense of the world and yourself. Absolutely. How many days you wake up miserable and the next day you wake up, you feel like $1 million, and you ask yourself, how did the world change so fast? Right? And it, so you look back at what was it yesterday that made me feel that way, and what is it today that makes me feel that way? But that alone tells you tomorrow's going to be a fresh day, right? So if you can get some sleep tonight, you'll wake up to another new you, because everything is cumulative. Everything continues. Nothing ends until you end. Randy comes back with mindset plays a significant role in your relationship with success and failure. To me, if everybody got to today, they survived and they got through everything that they had to get through to get to today. Call it a win, just in the total part of it. Don't go in and pick out the stuff you wish never happened. It's too late. You can't unring a bell. Randy says, mindset is the framework for your work and life. Well, obviously, you're a mindset guy, Randy. Sleep is overrated. and it is to a point, but everything's conditional. And I think what Sarah's saying is you let your body tell you what it needs. right? If you need sleep, you'll know it. If you're hungry, you'll know it. But if you think I didn't get enough sleep, I'm going to just be awful today. Well, you're already awful today, right? You're just going to take it forward and then blame it on sleep and then blame it on you for not getting to sleep and then blame it on whoever it was to make you sleepless. And now you're just following something that never had to be followed. Uh, okay, he loves naps. This is a great cathartic opportunity for everybody to share what they've been holding in and what can now exchange for what they have. So, everything is redirection of thought, action, who you're with, why you're there. And that's where a review will come in as you create a checklist. So, Sarah, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, love it. Mindset totally is everything. And I mean, we talk about waking up tomorrow with a different mindset, but like you said previously, there is only this now moment. So why can we not change our mindset in this now moment? Because we've always got that power of choice. So choose to change, from waking up, oh, I feel tired, or oh, I feel miserable, oh, it's raining. What can we look for? Oh, this is a great cup of coffee, and oh, I'm going to see friends today. And I choose to make this day work for me how I want it to. So we can flick that switch in our mindset literally on a dime. So why would we not? Why would we want to? Like, when I was in that depression with suicidal thoughts, I hadn't come across healing my mind. I didn't know what to do because my mind wasn't in the right place to think logically and rationally about it. But if we just take a moment and understand that we can change our mind, we can choose how we want to feel, because our thoughts determine our beliefs determine our behaviors, and our behaviors determine our actions, as Gandhi says, more or less. So let's choose different thoughts, choose different beliefs. If we need to, find a belief that works for us, and change your mindset about what is possible and what you didn't think was possible previously. And Carl says, how do you identify a bias? It's about looking at why you believe or buy into something. And can you look at conflicting advice with regards to that subject and take that on board and identify, if you're only looking for information that validates your bias. And if you're unable to take on board other information, then recognize that as a bias. But if you can look at like the flip side of the coin, if you will, and read that and evaluate that without thinking, well, this is what I think over here, and just let that go, just be the observer of that and look at new information and say, what is behind this? Is there any truth behind this? And is that truth backed up by something else, whatever that is? But just be totally honest with yourself. Do I only think this and only want to think and believe this and dismiss that out of hand? But can I look at that and make that now this, and really dig into it and find out what it is I don't like about it, why I don't align with it, why my bias is for that, if that makes sense. So it's about recognizing by reviewing and analyzing what your beliefs are to recognize your biases, because we've all got normalcy bias, and that's just looking at things that we consider normal, and everything outside of that we don't consider like our norm. So can we dig into things that grate us a little bit, that irritate us a little bit, that are outside what we believe, and look at why have we dismissed that? What's the rationale for that? But without looking at, well, that's because that's what I believe, but look at it as a more rational, logical understanding.
Yeah, that's great. And what comes to mind is we're talking about singular focus, one thing, whatever it is. and our experience with it and our review or judgment of it. But today, and we've talked about that this week, there's so much access to so much information
Yeah.
that's at your fingertips on YouTube. Anytime I think I want to do something, especially if it's technology or something I haven't done, in 30 minutes, I see 6 of the best 5-minute videos.
Yeah.
And now I've got context, but the beauty of that is you've got 6 viewpoints and none of them are yours.
Yes.
Right? So if you're just you and it, and here's what I think, here's what I believe, well, just one-on-one, have you ever taken a poll of one person? It's not very compelling. But if you could say, here are the 6 experts in their field, even if it's self-experts, well, that piece makes sense. That piece doesn't make sense. And over 6 of them, you get 1 or 2 channels, right? And now you say, that's the channel I'm going to walk through, and then gather more people, and then everything solidifies. And now I can say, well, after watching 20 videos and 20 different people, well, the consensus is 14 believe this, 6 believe that, and so there's something in the middle. And now you feel like a curator instead of the judge, right? All you've done is reviewed and then taken wherever you were and decide how much of this do I want to add or subtract. And now you take the responsibility of judging too quickly with little knowledge. It usually lends itself to emotion instead of rational judgment.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of impulsiveness to people, right? They can't wait. They got to, and it's like, it's not ready. It's like taking something out of the oven before it's cooked. Doesn't matter how hungry you are, it's going to taste awful even if you start to eat it. So without getting away from cooking, Omar says, Sarah's the best to have about the subject. Excellent guest. See, isn't that great? And if Sarah wouldn't have shared as much as she does today and in the past, we could have never reviewed and come up with, at least Omar couldn't have come up with that kind thought. And when you're kind to others, you're kind to yourself, because and too many people need something to give something, when if they just give whatever they have that they're not using, it didn't cost something. And if something comes back, great. And it will in time, in different form. Even a pleasant thank you payment for something. And I think if everybody was able to look at everything as an opportunity to get better, to get smarter, to get faster, and you know what it comes down to? Who are you with?
Yeah.
What do you say to that, Sarah?
Yeah, and we tend to be with people who think like we do, have the similar beliefs that we do. Although not always, but we tend to align ourselves with similar people. But I think I've mentioned this previously, the art of debating is being lost, because people are going down this single, like, this is what I believe, this is right because this is what I believe, and losing the art of debating, because we've been pushed more and more online. And when we're online, we can't see the emotions, we can't feel the energy of the people that we're talking to. Whereas if we're talking to them face to face, it's much easier to have a full and better understanding of where they're coming from. When with the spoken word, with the emotion behind it, and the non-verbal body language, all helps deepen our understanding in what that person's saying. But when we're online, just with words only, there's no emotion, there's no body language. So we take it with our own interpretation, with our own bias put onto those words. And that's where I think we can get into a lot of trouble, because we might read something into something somebody said that they didn't even mean, because we're putting our own thoughts, our own bias on it. So having the debates, having these face-to-face conversations, we can see that other person. We can see their energy behind it. We can feel their emotions as we're talking to them. And we get, as I say, a deeper understanding. And it's that our biases, if we can have this conversation, we can potentially open up, like you've just said about taking a survey of 20 people and 14 people think one thing and 6 think another. But actually, it can open up something that we might never have even thought about before. When we're on this as our thoughts. And if somebody goes, well, what about that? Well, I didn't even know that existed. And if you don't know that you don't know, you are never even going to see that thought, that idea, that belief, because it's not even in your view. But if somebody opens that up to you, then you can look at that and evaluate it, review it, and see how that fits in with your thoughts. And do you need to change your thoughts? Can you, review how you're thinking and take that on board, or is it not quite aligning with what you believe? And if so, why is that? What is it about what they've said that you don't like or you can't take on board? And that again is assessing your own biases, your normalcy bias, and what it is that you think and believe.
I think that's perfect. And what comes to mind is whatever you received from whoever or whatever you received it from, what role did you have in defining or distilling what they were saying? Right? If someone says you're really slow, and you just say they think I'm really slow, instead of asking why is that?
Yeah.
Right? What does that pertain to? And at that point, they'll say, well, you were just slow going to the meeting, and so, okay, well, I understand. But unless you ask that,
yeah,
you take away, I'm not good enough because someone judged me. And the question is, who has more value and confidence in your mind, the stranger, the person who may have not the best intent in what they're saying to you, right? People love you no matter what. And the ones who don't matter. So at a certain point, you decide to accept something. I mean, if I tell you it's Tuesday right now, it doesn't matter. You won't accept it. You'll just think, why even argue it? How could you argue it, right? Because to you, and it could be something that isn't a fact, it's a fact. It's something that you would bet everything on, that you owned.
Yeah.
Right? So again, it's not what people say, it's who gives credit to who, and value and importance, and who is defending themselves. People say they attacked me. Well, did you come back with anything? Or you just said, thank you very much, I believe you? And you feel bad when you don't ask that question you should have. Or you go in to ask a question and you lose confidence or bring something up. But what could have been solved now starts to manifest itself inside of you. And that's what's wrong with schools in most cases, is they give these arbitrary grades without understanding of context or condition. What if someone doesn't know the language? Somebody doesn't know customs. What if someone is someone? What difference does it make? And I think when you have an open world, the only thing that can make you as healthy as possible is an open mind. But with that said, let me go to comments, because we're getting comments on the post that we're not getting on the screen. So I'll mention Afolabi is here from Nigeria. He's daydreaming for hopeful future. Rose Renati Davis is here. Good morning. She's from Alert Family Services. And Anjan Banerjee is here. He's a Bishop School. Greetings, wonderful. Now let's review. And it comes back, review is buying time, else second thought. Well, yeah, I think I guess buying time is I guess can be well defined as investing time, right? You invest time in your review. How do you justify the time and the review? Because the hope is I'm going to adjust something. I'm going to eliminate something. I'm going to add something. And I think, again, if, they say you're the factor of the 5 people you spend the most time with, whatever they think as a group will be what you're exposed to.
Yeah.
Whatever they do, you'll come along with. If they love country music, you're going to have to love it to be part of it, or bowling or drinking or whatever they do. But, that's the beauty. You can change.
Yeah.
If someone says you're stuck and now you got to make things happen, you say, well, because of my circumstance, how could I walk over there if I can't get there? But if it's like, hey, you choose every morning. I mean, how much time do people put into their wardrobe, right? Or getting made up every day? And why not say, okay, here's what I'm going to wear today in my relationships, right? I know this person's going to pick me up, and I know this person is going to make me happy. And why don't I bring that to them? And I'm sure I'm doing the same. So when you're helping yourself, you're helping too. And that only ripples. And I think it's shows like this that says, makes perfect sense. If you can do it, the question is, why don't you? And if you don't do it, why are you complaining about where you are? Because you could have fixed it.
Yeah.
What do you think, Sarah?
Yeah, and on top of that, Don, I'd like to say about asking for clarity as well, because somebody could say something and it could be taken out of context, like you're slow. And well, what does that mean? Like, I'm mentally slow, I'm physically slow, I'm emotionally slow. What? So if we ask for clarity, it gives us some context around what they're saying. But if we don't ask for that clarity, then we can just be, well, the victim to it. Oh, they think I'm slow. Maybe I'm not as intelligent as they are. And then we can start digging our own hole. So in asking for that clarity, it helps us to understand. And then we could maybe ask more questions about, well, what is it why do you think that? What have I done to make you think that? And then we can reflect and review on ourselves, our mindset, our abilities, and so much more, our relationships, our wardrobe. There's so much that we can review, but we tend not to do it often unless somebody said something to us. There are some people that will self-evaluate and review continuously every day, and then there's others that will just go into autopilot and just run their lives from the subconscious mind, doing what they do without much thought, because they just know how to do it and they just do it every day. And then there's everybody else in between those two types of people. So if we can review ourselves, why would somebody say that? Or how do I feel about myself doing that? Or what are my abilities? How do I perceive this relationship? There's so much that we can review, but we need to step outside of our autopilot function and come into that conscious moment and be totally conscious of everything around us and our feelings and our thoughts at that time. And then start digging, where has that thought come from? Why do I believe that? Where has that behavior come from? And in reflecting and reviewing on our life, but our past as well, and things people have said to us, we can use that to better ourselves, to improve ourselves, whether it's the way we dress, the way we show up, the way we speak, the words we say, the jobs we do. There's so much that a review could actually lead to us changing. And that, as I said before, that review can be constructive criticism or a correction. Have you thought about doing that? Or rather than, if you do that, then that's going to happen. There's those two different ways of reviewing our lives. But however we're reviewing our life, I think we need to give ourselves some grace and come from a place of love, not berate ourselves for doing something maybe badly at some point in our time, because we do everything we do with the skills and knowledge we have at the time. And when we're tired, it impacts our skills and knowledge. And we tend to go back to old behaviors, especially. So if we can take that moment, give ourselves some grace and some love, and constructively criticize something that we maybe be able to do better, and make those corrections, because it's all for our own benefit. But and when we review ourselves and change our behaviors and our thoughts and our actions, as you say, it has that ripple effect, and it ripples out, and other people see it as well. And we can impact their lives in a positive way when we make those changes and be that role model, be that person that we want to be. And other people might look up to us and think, well, they've healed that, they've done that, they've changed that. And, if they can do it, I can do it.
Yeah, and when you look at it, there's phases and layers and depth and richness to it. Because again, someone can say something and you just take it at face value and walk away with it. Then you can ask the question, can you better elaborate or define for me? And then after that, do you have a solution that would help me?
Yes.
Right? And criticism without solution is just criticism. Right? If you don't have, how do you know I'm wrong if you don't know what's right? How do you know what's good for me if you can't give me what you think I'm off from? Right? And all of a sudden you feel at least you've got the power to not so much defend yourself, but to be better served by, I want to know about you now. I want to know why you did what you did. What was your intent? Because, it only takes a few minutes to ask 3 or 4 questions, especially if you're probably not going to get a good answer, versus taking it home and for hours worrying about it, thinking about it. What did they mean? Why did they mean? And then all of a sudden you come up with situations. Was it when I was slow doing that? And all of a sudden you're reinforcing it. And what's even worse, then you go to somebody who you need and supports you, and you tell them, and they take the other person's side. You ever come home from school when you're a kid and say the teacher did this, the teacher did this, and your parents say, well, they're the teacher and you should listen to them and they're probably right. And it's like, well, who's on my side here? Right? Who's and that's the thing is, right from wrong because how it's going to affect you if they are right. And wrong doesn't take as much of a role. And a lot of times people are just confirming what you're believing. Right? And once they say it, it's like, yeah, they're right because that's where I'm at already.
Yeah.
And that validates it. And it just makes it harder to change because Jim said this and he meant it. And, and why do you get into holes and not be able to get out of them? And that's really by someone saying, you're much better than that. Or, hey, they're so lucky to have you. I don't know where they're coming from. And you agree with them then.
Can I just jump in there? Because I'm just thinking now as a coach, I might ask people constructive questions around what they've said, but I wouldn't offer them a solution. I would then ask them what they thought they could do differently, or identify a thought that might be taking them down to a behavior that they might not want to be doing. And how could they think and choose differently to choose a different behavior? Because we can all suggest things from our own life experiences and our opinions, having gone through similar things. But I think if we can get people to think about their own words, thoughts, beliefs, actions, and reflect and review those, and then come up with their own answers, they're more likely to look at it from a different perspective. And especially as a mum, I've found that my kids might listen to me when I say, I've got the experience and I've done that. So, we might not want to do that. You might want to look at doing something different. But actually, I think they've got to learn themselves their own way. So they might well listen to me, but they might not do as I've asked or showed them the way. So by asking specific questions around their thoughts and ideas, they can come up with their own solutions without me giving them solutions. So then I can validate their solutions, and it helps them to use a different part of their brain for problem solving and come up with ideas that they might well then follow through on. Only if they're really struggling, I might, offer some solutions. There's, have you thought about this, or have you thought about this, or have you thought about this? And if they haven't thought about that, then I've opened those channels for them. But if they can come up with their own solutions, I think it's much, much better, and they're more likely to follow the path of their own, because they've answered their own questions.
Well, I think that's so important because it creates confidence in someone's ability for their power. Because, it's not the action, it's what was the intent and what was the purpose. And kids who are real honest may just say, listen, I just felt like acting out.
Yeah.
Right? I knew it was wrong in an overall way, but I was in the right place at the right time in my mind. And I thought, this is the time I'm going to experiment. Right? And I think that's the beauty of knowing that you're not any better than they are, because you act out and you do things not always for the right reasons, but because if you're on vacation, if you're at a beautiful restaurant, you'll act different than if you're sitting around a table eating a sandwich or something. And that's the beauty of change. And if you know that there is never one way, everything's conditional. If you're in the desert, what's the value of a pint of water? Whatever you can come up with. No one will say, well, you overpaid. It's like, well, I'm in the desert and I need water, and someone had water and they were willing to exchange something for it. And I think everything is like, I did the best I could. If you just say that.
Yeah.
I did the best I could with what I had as far as knowledge and resources. And it was a bad situation to begin with. I was just looking to get through it or over it or away from it. And I'm okay with it because, that's the other thing. Someone says you're slow. I've got no problem being slow. I like slow. Am I missing something? And I think that's the other characteristic people have to measure against. How much time do you do doing, acting? Relate that much time to how much time do you spend reviewing?
Yeah.
Not nearly enough, right? If you review an hour a week of solitary time, that's quite a bit for most people. Yeah. Well, you've all lived 24 hours for 7 days that week. And 1 hour is enough to say, maybe you want to do it daily for 10 minutes. It doesn't take that long. Not much changes from day to day in most cases. So 80% of your day will be 80% of tomorrow's day, waking up, getting ready, eating, all that other stuff. What did you do that you were geared to do, that you've been developing yourself for? What conversation did you have? Because if you didn't, you listen to somebody else's conversation probably, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube. And, I've always been a believer, build your dream first before you build someone else's. Right? Watch their show. Why not have your show? Listen to somebody. Why not share with someone? It's just positioning. If you just flip it, I'm going to be listening to this. What am I listening to? Even if I'm not the person speaking, maybe I should change the channel. We were talking the other day. There's so much access to so much wonderful individuals, legend in personal development and healing. Joe Dispenza, I know his story. He was paralyzed. He wasn't supposed to do anything. And just by harnessing one's mind and building that belief, your body listens to your mind, right? How do you know you're taking a right step instead of a left step? You don't think, it happens when it needs to happen. So if you believe in what you see and feel, and I think that's what faith is the belief in the invisible. Yeah. When you can believe something and know it's true without feeling it, seeing it, and once you have that, it's true, that's where everything good comes from, because the doubt disappears. It's only like, should I? Yeah, maybe not, and even if you do, you go kind of halfway, you're tentative. That doesn't build a lot of momentum. right? So you want to build on yesterday and say, today I got a little bit better than I was yesterday in a little way. And hopefully tomorrow I'll keep continuing that. And eventually little things become bigger things. And then repetition allows you to get comfortable.
Yeah.
Right? The first time going on a terrifying ride is worse than the second time if you ever decide to go back. And eventually it's like, I know what to expect. I'm not in fear. So it's really taking your pulse. Carl has a huge comment. Okay, I'll try to read it. There is a joke about Abraham Lincoln, probably too long to show here. Yep. Where he appears one morning in front of a judge to argue a case. It was clear that the judge disagreed with the legal position that Lincoln was advocating, repeatedly challenging the argument. But with Lincoln's eloquence, he decided in favor of Lincoln's client and adjourned for lunch. To his surprise, he found Lincoln in his court in the afternoon and advocating a position opposite to that which he had argued in the morning. The judge asked Lincoln how he could justify arguing a contradictory case, and Lincoln responded that he had thought over what the judge had stated during the lunch hour and that he had changed his mind. Well, sometimes you're even the better person when you get what you want and you find out it wasn't the right thing, and you go back and tell someone, I'm sorry, I was
wrong.
Yeah, I figured it out. And you know how much respect you get for that? It's when people go above and beyond and are honorable, and you know their intent is good, and you know what really happens. The next time you go back, it's easier because they know you're an honorable person. You know, people that's another aspect. They don't want to get taken advantage of, you know, and it's, you know, some people say, well, it was only $5. Yeah, but it was the whole process and the whole thing, and it wasn't the money. It was really the feeling I got from it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's what people are afraid of is words by themselves don't mean anything, but if they make you feel awful, they have tremendous power, and that gives people control. Because the person who says you're slow, wow, they really took it in a way I never thought. Next time I want something, hey, we're going to go back to that type of thing again. Versus, oh man, they really came back and asked me what I was talking about and challenged me and made me, you know, be responsible for what I said. Next time I'm going to watch my words with that person, because everything sets a precedent for yourself or whatever you're involved in. When you start backing up, it's going to be hard to get forward again. And I think there's a point, you know, just like a car, it's okay to be in neutral and it's okay to go in reverse and back out and start up again. But when you know you just can't feel good about where something is, and you're not going to leave unless you could make it right somehow. You know, I mean, even when you leave family after visiting them, you know, you'd rather leave like everybody was in a great position. And when you come back, hopefully they'll still be there, versus someone said something and someone blew up and then everybody feels this. And I think if you can be the advocate for goodness, I mean, I even say on the show, there's no reason anybody should say, I disagree with that. It's like, well, that's an interesting point. I'd like to share mine, right? What you do is not dependent on what somebody else's does, but it's also a pleasure when someone says, well, that's a remarkable insight you have. And you know, I learned so much from it, and I'd like to add mine. Because everybody in the audience is looking at you as a person, not as an authority. Oh, they treated that person awful. You know, they were honest and they might have been right. But I didn't want to have to experience that. It's just like you see a restaurant, a couple starts arguing, and it's like everybody loses their appetite. You know, someone says something awful or mean, or somebody's baby is crying and someone acts out or something like that. So it's really being a testament to yourself and how I do better than most people expect the average person to do. I'm more tolerant, I'm more patient, I'm more understanding. And, you know, raising kids is always a way of raising yourself. And, you know, we had kids kind of later. And I just realized that, a friend is a friend for life. A parent is there until someone moves out, right? And I always decided we would work things out by talking things out, right? And it's like, if something went wrong, let's talk about it. And people would start to realize you can talk about things, you
Yes.
can make a case. And the thing was, hey, if we can't work it out today, we'll talk again tomorrow. And after a while, the kids would say, I don't want to talk anymore. Let's just, and they get a little worn out like that. But that's how people can be civil.
Yes.
You want to speak to civil?
Yeah, and I think that's great, Don, because you're having that logical, rational conversation and making the children aware that there are consequences for actions. We can't just act out how we want to act out. We need to take on board how our actions, sorry, affect other people, because we know how our actions are going to affect us in the main, but we often don't think about the consequences of what our actions will do to other people. So having those logical, rational conversations to show the children the consequences of those actions is great, because that then opens their mind and it develops their empathy as well. And also, I want to speak to what you said about owning up and being honest and truthful. I think we can get stuck in our path moving forwards at times, and realize that maybe this isn't feeling right for us anymore, but we're so far down this path now, we're just going to keep going because it takes courage to keep going and keep moving forwards. Well, yeah, but it takes more strength and courage to go, do you know what? I was wrong. And this path isn't really for me now, because I've seen, this bit of grass on this side of the path and this bit of grass on this side of the path, and it's far more inviting than staying on this path. So if we can honestly be honest with ourselves and say, this path is no longer right for me, and choose to change it, that takes a huge amount of confidence and strength to do that. But then we can choose a path that makes us feel better, and when we feel better about what we're doing, we do better. And the other thing about that is people, there's obviously some people will say, oh look, they made a late choice late in life, and some people will see it as a negative, and other people will see it as a positive. But ultimately, it doesn't matter how other people see it, as long as we feel that it's the right one for us. But also that shows honesty and integrity, because it's like saying, well, this path was no longer right for us, and it just felt totally wrong. So by choosing this path, we are aligned with our heart more. We're doing more for us by going down this path. So it shows that honesty and integrity, that we're able to follow our heart and do what we want to, rather than just keep fulfilling other people's expectations or stay on that path because that's the path we thought we would always be on. And I think that's a great trait to have, to be able to choose something different and step away from where you were going onto something new, because it takes a lot of confidence, but also it's going to require likely new skills and more knowledge to step off that path into something new. But the other thing is if we can do that and people see us for who we are, that being honest and having that integrity, it helps build more trusting relationships as well.
Absolutely. And when people don't do those things, they blame it on pride. I'm too proud to admit to my cousin that I should have never done that. And they say people who go for therapy and counseling, they're the strong ones. They're the ones who know they need help and they know where to get it. The ones who, I'm fine, there's nothing wrong with me, and they continue to build that wall, are the ones who won't get the help. And the other aspect is when you admit what everybody knows to be true, it's not a big admission.
Yeah.
Right? When everybody knows you broke the lamp and you're trying to blame it on something or somebody else. And it's easier to say, I'm so sorry. You know, if you start with, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I apologize. So it's not even like you're going to debate it. You're just going to acknowledge it. I broke it. What can I do to make it right if possible? But just know I really feel bad and I never intended that. Right? And if you just did that, the person would almost say, don't worry about it. It didn't mean that much, but I do really appreciate your gesture. And all of a sudden you look stronger.
Yeah.
Than if you're like trying to fight, go against the flow, and you feel better because it's like I accepted it, you know, and I would have known I was dishonest even if everybody else didn't.
Yeah.
You know, and is that something you want? About what? And if you can't get straight and honest about little things, how are you ever going to deal with much bigger things like that require emotions or relationships? And you only have the mirror to look at, to ask yourself, why are you where you are? Because there's a saying, for things to change, you need to change.
Yes.
Right? When you start making changes, things will start changing around you. But if you say, I'm going to be on both sides of the fence until one side shows itself, when you're on both sides of the fence, you're nowhere. You're in purgatory of in the middle, maybe uncommitted, uncertain. And that's a choice people have to make is don't raise the bar so high. Don't squeeze the time so short that you have to do things. If you say, hey, I'm just a lazy person, I love being lazy, well, find a place and an environment that allows for that, right? Find a little place, no benefit. And is that what you want? But I think people want this and that instead of this or that.
Yeah.
Or they want it my way. I'll do it, but it's going to be on my terms. I'm like, well, it could be forever, you know, if that's how bad you want it. And I think just that question, people don't want answers. They want another question sometimes to say, well, have you thought of this? Or here's a great book. I'm going to send it to you, right? That's another thing I've been discussing this week. You want something for somebody. How bad do you want it for somebody? If you say, hey, Sarah's going to be in town speaking, you should go to it versus, hey, I got 2 tickets to Sarah. I'm picking you up. We're going to go to lunch. Then we're going to go see Sarah. It's like, wow, it's already made. All I got to do is get in the car. And you'll know they'll do more of that. And you know what happens? Out of guilt or obligation or gratitude, they'll figure out, what am I going to do nice to this person in the future? What am I going to book and send it to them? When am I going to pick them up and take them somewhere? And you know, that means more than the whole book or where you're going. Is the gesture, hey, let's be together, let's do stuff together, and let's enjoy each other. And I think if you did that in every encounter, or if that was your goal, right? I don't care where they came from, how they came in. That's up to them. But I have an impact on how they leave here.
Yeah.
And how I leave here. And I could set the table and prepare the meal before they even get a chance to think about it. And they'll be eating well and I'll be happy. So why not prepare? Because review is after the fact typically. But if you can prepare, how do I make my review so much better? You know, when someone grades a paper, it's always nice to have all the right answers.
Yeah.
Instead of worrying about the arbitrary letters that they might put on. So anyways, ran a little over. It's weekend. We allow ourselves a little bit of that. Want to thank everybody in the audience for coming today. You make this show what it is. I know that I believe I help Sarah and Sarah helps me be better every time we have this encounter, because we would have never came up with these ideas. And now that reinforced and then complemented existing things. So going forward, it's better. So with that said, tomorrow, let me just share. We've got Kelly and myself Beverly is coming with a new lady, Linda Goodman. Myself and Dave Snell will be here Wednesday. Kelly and me will be back on Thursday. And then me and Jeffrey Lackey will be here on Friday. So thank you so much. Thank you, Sarah. Reach out to us if you have any other thoughts or anything else. And with that said, have a safe, enjoyable Sunday. Take care.